Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Matt and I do like video games, and in today's video, well, we're talking all about Xbox, Redfall, the state of Xbox, how we feel about it, kind of like just a general vibe check. I'm going to be going over all my thoughts and feelings about the last, I don't know, 1 to 2 weeks with Xbox, but let's hop right into the video. And guys, listen, I want to start first with the ABK acquisition. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'm tired of talking about it. I don't like talking about this when there's good news, let alone when it's all negative and all the news is like, we're going to be waiting many more years for this to be resolved. Okay, so for me personally, if the EU were to come back, we know the UK CMA has already denied it. We know the FTC is against it. If the EU comes out against the acquisition, I would not be upset if Microsoft said, you know what, ABK, sorry, here's your whatever it is. I think it's like 3.5 or $4 billion that we owe you for not being able to get the deal done. Just washed their hands of it and said, sorry, ABK, we tried. It's not working. And in fact, I'd be pretty happy about that, because then that would mean that this is all over. We can get back to just the core focus, which should always be just the games, right? And listen, let's just say the deal does get nixed, because that does seem like a very real possibility. Who's to say Microsoft can't just cut a deal to market Call of Duty going forward? Sony's contract is up in what, 2025? Just sign a deal and market Call of Duty like you did on the Xbox 360. I mean, look at what they're doing with Diablo 4. It comes to every Xbox showcase we see, we're seeing Diablo 4. You don't need to own this company, you know? Now, would it be nice to own Activision Blizzard King? Absolutely, it would be nice for Microsoft to own Activision Blizzard King. And not because of Call of Duty, not even because of Diablo, but for King. I don't give a shit about mobile. I know most of you watching don't give a shit about mobile, but the fact is Microsoft does. They want some of that mobile money, and King was their way to get it. That was their easy end to get some of that mobile money. Microsoft might have to find another way to make that mobile money. And listen, I don't think mobile gaming lives and dies by King. There's tons of games out there besides Candy Crush. I feel like, you know, Activision, Blizzard King, it just kind of fell into Microsoft's lap. And I mean, obviously they're stupid if they don't go for it. You'd be dumb to not go for it, right? And listen, they went for it. And at the end of the day, it may or may not work. Like this whole thing that Xbox's entire future hinges on whether or not this deal is successful. It's just not the case. Without Activision Blizzard, they've got about 30 studios. They'll be just fine. And just one final point on this whole acquisition talk, then I'll wrap the acquisition talk up. This deal falling through would hurt Activision a whole lot more than it would hurt Microsoft. To the point where I genuinely feel bad for Activision. Not the top end of Activision. Like, I don't feel bad for Bobby Kotick. Bobby Kotick stinks. We can shoot him right out of a cannon and into the sun. I do not care. But the general employees of Activision, the general feeling of happiness, the general work environment of Activision, from all that we hear, is absolute toast. It's in the garbage. It's done. And listen, this is a gaming channel, so you're probably wondering, well, how does that affect us as gamers? Well, listen, if Activision Blizzard King falls through for Microsoft, that pretty much cements Activision as just Call of Duty going forward. You could argue that Activision has been just Call of Duty for the last 15 years, and you'd be pretty much right. I mean, you know, we got some revivals of Crash Bandicoot, we got some Spyro remakes, there was Prototype 1 and 2 in that time period. But outside of that, I mean, it's pretty much just Call of Duty, right? Activision was in the market to sell for somebody. They were actively seeking to be bought. Microsoft said yes. If this falls through, Activision is in a very bad way. They are in a very bad way. We can pretty much say goodbye to any sliver of hope that we would have had of any sort of diversity outside of Call of Duty, Diablo, Overwatch, and World of Warcraft. We can pretty much just say goodbye to any thoughts or hopes of diversity outside of those 4 IPs. And that's just something that hurts gamers as a whole. But honestly, okay, moving on from that, because we can't spend this whole video talking about Activision and Microsoft. That's not what this is about. It's about Xbox. And so up next, I want to talk about Redfall, and that will ultimately lead us into the big point of this video, which is Xbox as a whole. So Let's get into it. Now, Redfall launched with what I'm sure you guys have seen by now, middling reviews. Some pretty average at best, and some pretty awful at worst reviews for Redfall. Now, with all that being said, with all the people saying, it's a terrible game, it launched in an unacceptable state, I'm here to tell you that one of those two things is true. I think the game is pretty fun. I think the core of the game is built around a really fun concept. And sometimes, in fact, a lot of times, that fun does shine through. But it is absolutely true that this game launched in an unacceptable state, and anybody saying otherwise is lying to themselves. And let me be clear, when I say that the game launched in an unacceptable state, I don't mean that, something like, oh, the performance is off, it's bad performance, it's not optimized well. I mean, that is true, the performance is off, it's bad performance, and it's not optimized well, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just real game-breaking kind of things, like stuff that'll stop progress on a mission. For example, me and my buddies Hard Days Mike and Ham Solo were playing Redfall co-op last night, having a great time, really enjoying ourselves. Like I said, the game is fun when it works, and we got to a part in a mission where we have to be standing in the exact same spot. We're in front of this dollhouse, you need to be standing there to progress the mission, right? It tells us to stand there, we're all standing there, nothing is happening. It's not letting us progress the mission. We've done everything we need to do, it's not letting us make any progress. It turns out we had to close the game, open it back up, restart, load back into co-op, go back, do the mission over again, and then get to that point again, and then we could continue the mission. But even more than that, I'm also talking about bugs that break immersion of the game. I had another bug last night when I was playing with my buddies, where whenever I open the start menu, the way you navigate the start menu is with a little cursor, which, by the way, side note, I'm tired of that in console games. I'm tired of playing on my Xbox and navigating pause menus with a cursor. Please, can we stop this trend? I'm looking at Far Cry, I'm looking at Redfall now, I'm looking at a ton of games that just make you navigate menus with a cursor. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is another one of them. Can we please stop this? But back to the bug I was talking about. When you open up the pause menu, it brings up a cursor, that's how you navigate the pause menu. Now, when I was closing the pause menu, the cursor was still on my screen, directly in the center of my screen. In fact, not even directly in the center, it was in the center, slightly below the center of my screen. So my reticle on my gun was, let's say my reticle's here, right? This cursor was like right here. So it's throwing me off of my aim every time I'm aiming because I'm looking at the cursor. And in order to get rid of this cursor, I had to open the start menu, drag the cursor down to the bottom of the screen, and then when I unpaused it again, now the cursor's down there out of the way. I can still see it, but it's not right next to my crosshairs on my gun. And then on top of that, you got things like texture popping, which obviously break immersion. Whenever you're walking towards something and you can see these blurry, mushy textures being loaded in as you come up close to them. And I think the number one thing that is broken and breaks immersion in Redfall is the enemy AI. Now, I see a lot of people point out Deathloop and say Deathloop didn't have very smart AI either. No, it didn't. But it was still way smarter than the AI in Redfall. And listen, mindlessly mowing down enemies in video games is fun. It's been proven. I mean, think back to the last 15 years of Call of Duty. Up until the last few years, Call of Duty campaigns have just been mindlessly walking forward and shooting your gun at enemies. That's it. It's been a fun time. The enemies in Redfall are so much more stupid than even the enemy AI in Call of Duty 1. Now, for me personally, I'm playing through the game on two different playthroughs, solo as Layla Ellison and then co-op as Devender. Now, both playthroughs are on normal, just the regular normal difficulty that they give you out of the box. Now, when you're fighting humans on normal difficulty, it is horrible. They do not respond to anything. In fact, Layla Ellison, the character I'm using on my solo playthrough, has this really cool ability where she shields herself with an umbrella. The umbrella absorbs bullets, and then she'll throw the shield back out, and then it just does a huge wave of damage to all the enemies in front of you. One problem with that. Whenever I use my shield, the enemy AI are so stupid. I mean, even if I'm not using my shield, the enemy AI are so stupid that they don't even really shoot at you. They'll shoot like 2 bullets at you in a matter of 30 seconds. So imagine me putting up that shield trying to absorb bullets, and there's no bullets to absorb. Then when I let go of the shield and throw it back out, it does basically no damage because it absorbed no damage. And listen, I don't think that there's these flaws in the game because Arcane intentionally designed the game to have these flaws. I think they're there because the game literally is not finished. And to finally kind of wind down my Redfall discussion in this video, I just want to say, I say this so much on this channel, I am truly an Arcane fanboy. I love Arcane. They are my favorite studio. Hands down, no exceptions about it. They are my favorite studio. But when a game isn't done, a game isn't done. And listen, I don't blame Arcane for shipping the game like this. I don't think they decided, hey, it's ready, guys, let's put it out there. I feel like that was probably Bethesda. And we actually learned recently that it wasn't really Xbox because Jez Corden put out an article on Windows Central saying that, well, this was Bethesda's call to release it. This was Bethesda's call to not delay it. So I don't really blame Arcane for this, and for better or worse, it doesn't really seem like I can blame the upper management of Xbox for this either. And this is where I want to hop in specifically on Xbox because I really want to talk about this. I made a video around 2 weeks ago, I think. It was around the time when the announcement was made that Redfall will only be launching with a 30 FPS mode on console. And I think the title of that video was something along the lines of Xbox has a messaging problem. And they do, and I very much believe that. But I feel like there's also another problem at Xbox. And let me just preface what I'm about to say for any fanboy who might be listening, who might get their feelings hurt or whatever. Xbox is my preferred platform. Xbox has always been my preferred platform from the very second I played Halo Combat Evolved. Xbox has always been my preferred platform. Xbox was solidified as my preferred platform once they acquired Bethesda. And now they have Bethesda RPGs, now they have Arcane, now they have Machine Games, now they have id Software. As soon as they got that, they were solidified. My preferred platform. I'm not going anywhere. And because I'm not going anywhere, because Xbox is my preferred platform, I feel like it's only right to call them out when they need to be called out. And I feel like how they handled Redfall needs to be called out. For better or worse, this game was marketed as the next big thing for Xbox. And listen, Redfall, like I said, is built around something that is inherently fun. It's a good premise. The problem is that even at its best, even if this launched polished, AAA polished like Hi-Fi Rush, this would not be the next big game for Xbox. This would be a pretty well-reviewed game, and people would enjoy it, some people would hate it, but it would be good. But there's a difference between setting expectations for a game to be good and setting expectations for a game to be the next big thing. And they were setting expectations for the next big thing. And that is the problem I have with how Redfall was marketed. Whether that was Xbox in charge of marketing or whether that was Bethesda in charge of marketing, whoever was in charge of it did a huge disservice to Arcane Austin. And I feel very bad for Arcane. Because listen, we all know that first impressions matter a lot when it comes to games, right? If a game makes a bad first impression, then I'm usually not going to come back for more of it, right? So think about Redfall, the first Arcane game to launch day and date into Xbox Game Pass, making it the most accessible Arcane game ever at its launch. Instantly, this game launched in the Game Pass, and up to like 25 million people can turn it on and play it instantly. Now, you guys know me. I'm an Arcane fan. I love Arcane. Dishonored 1, Dishonored 2, Prey, Deathloop. I love those games. But now let's focus in on, the average gamer. Maybe there's somebody watching this video right now who considers themselves to be an average gamer. This person probably hasn't played an Arcane game. Arcane makes games that are niche. They're focused in on a really specific group of people that like that kind of game. So let's just say this person's never played an Arcane game before. They see Redfall being marketed, this big $70 game, this huge game that they're making a big deal about. They see it's launching in Game Pass, they're like, I can't wait to play this, right? They can hop in with their buddies, have a fun time. They boot this game up, and they're greeted with a game that wasn't ready to be released, that honestly probably needed another year. It's gonna be difficult for me to be upset at this person whenever they say, I don't think I really want to hop into Deathloop or Dishonored or Prey, even though I know those are complete games. Those are complete games with entirely different gameplay styles. I know that. They don't know that. All they have is their first impression of an Arcane game, and that's important. And I mentioned that Windows Central article by Jez Corden where he was talking about Redfall was more Bethesda's responsibility than it was anything to do with Xbox. And while that may be true, and listen, Jez Corden knows a whole lot more about the behind the scenes of Xbox than I do, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know anything about it, but maybe it's time that Xbox does start taking a little bit more responsibility for this kind of stuff. Maybe it's time that we start integrating Bethesda into Xbox properly. Make them proper Xbox game studios, as opposed to something that just operates externally outside of Xbox game studios and does its own thing. Maybe it's time that we do stuff like that so we can have some direction at these studios so that they can be operated like, you know, an Xbox studio, so they can take advantage of the things that Xbox has to offer. Microsoft has a ton of internal studios. Let them work together. You know, maybe it's time for Xbox to get a little more hands-on. I mean, the hands-off approach is great when everything is going great, but when it's not going great, maybe you need to get a little more hands-on sometimes. And listen, if you're someone who's a fanboy, you're watching this, you're upset about what I'm saying, Phil Spencer said as much in his interview that happened literally today with the Kinda Funny Xcast.
And we didn't do a good job early on in engaging with Arcane Austin to really help them understand what it meant to be part of Xbox and part of first party, and use some of our internal resources to help them and kind of move along that journey even faster. So
that is a clip of Phil Spencer himself talking about exactly what I'm talking about here in this video. And listen, by the way, shout out to Phil Spencer. I know damn well it would have been super easy. It would have been super convenient to cancel that interview. You know they had that interview lined up for a while. It would have been really easy for him to cancel that interview. Just say, hey, I can't take the heat right now. We can't take the heat. I can't do the interview. That would have been the easy thing to do. Instead, Phil Spencer went on there, took it directly on the chin, as he should, and he owned up to it. He fully owned up to it, and I have never heard him speak as candidly about Xbox as a brand the way he did in that interview. Especially this generation. He's never talked like that this generation. He was super honest, super transparent about what was going on and what had happened and why he had failed in this regard. And I very much appreciate that. So kudos to you, Phil Spencer, for getting on there and doing that interview. But like I said, I just think Xbox and Bethesda need to communicate better with each other. There needs to be a constant flow of information. What does the latest build of this game look like? Is it in a playable state? Can I play test it myself? What does that stuff look like? You've got to have your other studios waiting in the wings to help when another team needs it. Think of how much help Arcane Austin could have used from someone like the Coalition or Ninja Theory. Ninja Theory knows about the Unreal Engine. There's not many people in the industry that know more about the Unreal Engine than the Coalition. That's all they use, literally. There's no reason that they couldn't have been able to come in and, you know, just help clean some things up on the back end, help tidy it up, maybe even optimize it better. Maybe we get that 60 FPS patch at launch. I mean, there's no reason to not be swapping information between teams. This is all valuable stuff. And I hope that Xbox starts doing more of this going forward. And in fact, it seems like we might have some evidence to suggest that will be the case. Just take a look at this clip from the Kinda Funny Xcast interview with Phil Spencer today.
I think we can do a better job with our internal team. We did a better job with Starfield. Again, nobody should believe it until they're playing the game, but that game was earlier on in production, and it was easier for us to kind of swarm a bunch of people to go and kind of help with some of the technology on our platform and ensure that we're going to ship a quality experience there. And we should have been there for Harvey and the team earlier. I think that's on us.
So when you listen to that, it sounds like he's saying that everything that they should have done with Redfall, with Arcane Austin, is what they're doing right now with Bethesda and Starfield. And obviously, it's very rightfully so. That's the way it should be done. And hopefully, you know, fingers crossed in the future, we're not running into problems like games launching before they're finished, because that just can't be the case anymore, man. Especially when you're charging $70 for your games. You can't be launching a game broken at $70. It's just not acceptable. You got to get in there. You got to do QA testing. You got to be on top of this kind of stuff. So, you know, hopefully this is something that Microsoft can learn from, and going forward, they'll be better for it. But you guys know I don't like ending videos on a negative note, so I want to end this one on a positive note. And it is positive because we do have the June 11th showcase coming up for Xbox and the Starfield Direct, where we will will see plenty more of Starfield. But what has me very hyped is that in this Kind of Funny Xcast interview with Phil Spencer, Phil name drops Hellblade 2. He says they have coming up Starfield, Forza Motorsport, and Hellblade.
We've got Starfield coming, we've got Forza coming, we've got Hellblade coming. Like, we've got collections of games.
Now, does that mean we'll be getting Hellblade this year? I don't know, but it sounds like it's next in line to be released after Forza Motorsport. So that is pretty exciting. I don't know about you guys, I'm hyped for Hellblade 2. Hellblade 1 was fantastic. If that manages to somehow squeeze in during this holiday season, that is going to be huge for Xbox. So fingers crossed they can make it happen, but whenever that game's ready, I will be ready to play it. But leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about all this stuff. Like I said in the beginning of the video, this is kind of like a vibe check for Xbox. So let me know what your vibe is down in the comments below. Leave a like if you like the video. And if you're enjoying this kind of content and you want to stay up to date with it going forward over here on the channel, the best way to do that is consider subscribing. Consider ringing that notification bell because that helps you stay up to date with everything that happens over here on the channel. And it helps push me in the algorithm, helps get the videos out to more people. And I very much appreciate that. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.